Religion and science are not equal. That's it. That's the opening today. Scientific theories are a thorough testing of assumptions based on the study of the natural world through observation, experimentation, and the criticism of peers. But religious faith is, well, at best, an affirmation of bias set against the backdrop of mythology. Religion and science most definitely are not equal. Do you disagree? Well, then pick up the phone, get on the line, and give us a call because the show is starting right now.
Welcome, everybody. Today is November 9th, 2025. I'm your host, Dr. Ben, and joining me is Richard Gilliver and our backup host today, Kelly Laughlin. How are you both doing today?
I'm doing excellent. I want to say, like Forrest, that I've never had a bad day, but I have had 2 or 3 of them throughout my life. So,
and it's been an incredibly long life as well.
For me so far, yeah.
Yeah, great. I'd just like to tell everyone that this show today is my birthday week. So if anyone wants to lavish praise and good wishes on me, feel free to do so in the chat, and I will accept them gracefully. I will not tell you how old I am going to be, but as you can see, there's plenty of grey here, so it's not young. Let's just say I'm not far behind Kelly. Let's put it that way.
I was going to say that's why I shaved.
Well, Talk Heathen is a live call-in show, and we have open lines. So get your calls in at 512-991-9242 or from your computer at tiny.cc/callth. Talk Heathen is open to your questions on religion, secular humanism, atheistic morality, cosmology, philosophy, science, history, life, the universe, and everything. And even if you have, I don't know, a fun story about being in religion that you think other people can learn from, call us. We want to talk to you about all of these things. And we're also hoping to talk about how God exists, if God is the conclusion to any of these logical arguments, and our special topic today, if you believe that religion and science are equally valid, definitely we want to hear your thoughts. So any other calls that you all want to talk to the audience about?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been traveling today, and I've been on that wonderful platform that is Threads quite a lot. And I've been asking lots of theists to call in. There've been many claims. I've been having a couple of arguments, and I've been trying to get people to call in. So I hope they do. In the pre-show TikTok, we had a Muslim guy who announced that he was a Muslim. I asked him to call him because I would love to take more Muslim calls. For all those Christians out there who tell us that we only pick on Christianity, this is not true. I would love to take more calls from other religious faiths. Most Christians call in than anyone else. That's why we take more Christian calls. It's as simple as that. Please, if that guy is listening, please do call in. We also had a great question about Islam from an atheist. I invited that person to call in as well. Please call in, you two, if you are listening, because these are going to be great topics to talk about. And I know Ben and myself are really interested in taking more Muslim callers.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, we are live every Sunday at 1 p.m. Central Time on YouTube, but there are other places that you can watch us, including Patreon. If you're a Patreon subscriber, you get access to bonus content and early releases. So make sure you check out that. And if you like TikTok, I know all these young people, I can't even say that I'm not a young person, but these young Gen Z people are all on the TikTok now. So if you prefer to get your shows on TikTok, there are live shows that take place there on Tuesdays and Thursday evenings. So definitely get involved in that. And just a reminder that Talk Heathen is a production of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And of course, we can't do any of this alone. We got a whole slew of crew members that are behind the scenes, making sure everything is working appropriately. So there they are. Thank you to everybody.
There's quite an array of facial hair in there, isn't there? Look at that. Look at that. Lee's clearly in the lead. Come on. Jonathan's, I think. Oh, Jonathan and Greg. Who's close second? This is turning into quite a race. Tune in next week to find out.
I think Ben's giving him a good run, though. We just couldn't see the front of his face.
Hide in your face. Hide in your face on crew cam. What's that all about? Come on.
He just doesn't want to participate in the beard contest because he would smoke everyone. And with that, we have a brand new segment that I'm very happy to introduce right now for you all. We're taking the time to highlight other organizations in our community that are doing some amazing work. So this is the Community Spotlight. Today, we're going to highlight SoFree, which is dedicated to supporting Canadian atheists and humanists. And we have a representative from them, Kat Dimou. I'm so sorry. I'm butchering people's names today. We have Kat, who's going to come on and tell us more about this wonderful organization. And I believe I clicked on it. There we go. Kat, you should be live on Talk Heathen. Tell us more about your organization.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I've never done this before, so thank you. I really appreciate this. I guess just in a nutshell, SoFree was founded 33 years ago. And basically, we are a community of people who, atheists, agnostics, whatever, it doesn't matter. We're a very strong and supportive community. It's really the heart of everything that we do. We're guided by humanist principles. We, basically our foundation is, community culture. We welcome everyone, like the questioning, the hardcore atheists, the longtime humanists. Basically, if you show respect and you're a critical thinker, you have intellectual curiosity, and you have shared values and interests, then you're welcome. We host all kinds of events throughout the year, from speaker events to pub nights to brunches to movie nights to annual celebrations such as Darwin Day and our winter solstice. We have an active presence in multicultural festivals and the annual World Religion Conference. And we also provide meaningful support, not just emotional outreach to our members, but also some of our members are also humanist officiants. So we help them for weddings, baby welcomings, funerals. And we are totally volunteer run and not for profit. We are driven by people who care, and through genuine fellowship, we enjoy camaraderie, we enjoy helping others, and we are not driven by dogma or financial incentive because, we're a not-for-profit. We are good because we want to be good, and because that's what's innate in all of us. And last year, we took our activities to the next level by launching a Humanism in Action conference. This is our second year to do this. We have 6 amazing presenters. It's a full-day celebration of humanist ethics and what we can do to make a difference in society, like both in our communities and in society in general.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we just showed a picture about the Humanism in Action conference that's coming up. Are there any other places people should go if they're interested in learning more about that particular conference?
Yeah, sure. You can go to our website, the SoFree.ca, or you can email us at events@SoFree.ca, or you can, if you want, you can email me directly at president@SoFree.ca. I'm happy to talk with anyone who is interested, who has some questions, who has ideas.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to hear from you today, and I'm sure there are a lot of people in the audience that would be interested in something like this. I know we have a good Canadian population in the audience right now, so super excited that we could network with you all and showcase this wonderful organization and the upcoming events.
Well, thank you so much. I really, really, really appreciate it. It's so for us, it's not just like a lecture series like the 6 people. Just it's a whole conference experience. There's networking, there's amazing food, and then we have a theatrical presentation at the end, followed by a banquet dinner. Last year we were so happy with because everybody was happy and it was such a success. So this year we're like, oh my gosh, we need to do this again. So we tried it last year and it was wonderful. So we're doing it again this year. It's just like the level of positivity is just overwhelming, and it makes us just all feel good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Any other questions from Richard or Kelly?
You know what? I've not got a question, but I've just got to say, Kat, I love the enthusiasm in your voice.
Yes.
I love the fact that you've come on here and you've literally just spitballed this, and it's so good. The excitement you have for it is, I produce this show. I'm a volunteer producing this show as well, and I put so many hours in. People don't understand how many hours goes into doing this, and I hear the excitement in your voice that I have when I've talked to people about Talk Heathen. Good on you. This is really good. I would encourage people to go out and, follow that link, go and have a look at SoFree. And if you're in the area, or even if you're not, and you can get tickets to the conference, go and check them out and do the networking, because it really is worth it when you get to go and meet people, meet new friends. Have these conversations in person. It really, really is worth it. So I just love it, Kat. Thanks very much.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah, it's not just about meeting new friends. It's also hearing ideas and perspectives that you wouldn't even think of, like from the speakers, for example, right? And you're like, oh, I never thought about that, and issues that really affect all of us. So yeah, we're very excited, and I am so delighted and grateful that we have such an amazing team. It's not just me, so I have a fantastic team that I work with, and we've been fortunate this year to have sponsors from other organizations that really believe in what we're doing, and it just encourages us to keep going. So. The enthusiasm is genuine, and I'm super excited. And I thank you so much for allowing me to say a few words.
Richard, you took the words right out of my mouth about the enthusiasm. I was going to say the same thing. I was like, oh, there goes my thoughts. But I love that you're doing this. And one of the things I saw on the flyers, it says fun, and I'm always up for some fun. So I think it was really important to have that on there. I really appreciate what you're doing as somebody who's done a lot of activism and volunteering. I know it's not easy all the time. And as Richard said, your enthusiasm is just overwhelming. It's great to hear it.
Thank you. I have this huge smile on my face right now. So.
Good. You should. Good.
Thank you all. Thank you all for what you're doing too. Your work is also incredibly important, and so I thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much for chatting with us about this. And anything else that you'd like to leave us with?
You feel free to reach out anytime. If anybody is listening and they want to attend a conference, or they want to learn more about SoFree or humanism, please feel free to reach out to us. We are very receptive to questions, to ideas, and to working together to, basically make the world a better place without religion.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Kat.
Thank you. Thank you. And have a wonderful, wonderful week.
You too. It was great
As
talking to
well.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.
I think our own Lee G will be emceeing that event as well. So,
Ooh, yes.
Yeah, that was great. I enjoyed that. I did laugh when she said I have a great team behind me as well. I wish we could say that.
Oh,
Kidding. It was a joke. It was a joke. You're lovely. I love all of you. You know this.
Yes, but we're gonna keep doing these segments in the weekly shows. So if you know of an organization or are part of an organization, specifically a nonprofit, that is important to emphasize. It has to be a nonprofit organization and one that is working in secular or atheist causes and humanist causes. Please email at spotlight@atheist-community.org to recommend that organization, and we can talk more about how to participate and share their stories with the community.
Absolutely. And we do have open lines, people, by the way. So if you want to call us, the theme for today's show is science and religion and everything within that. So is science or science and religion on an equal footing, as Kelly said at the start of the show? Or do you think, are you religious and do you think that science proves your religious belief? I was talking to someone earlier in the week who said that science proved the human body proved that God existed. I did tell this person we had a medical doctor hosting this week and invited them to call. They have not called yet. Perhaps they were a little bit put off by the fact that they had to substantiate the claim. And this is one of the key things, which is the difference between science and religious faith. You don't just get to say, I believe because X in science. So, Kelly, I'm the only non-science person here, really. So, you're a geologist. What does it mean to have that kind of peer review process that goes off in science for you?
Oh boy, because I have written a couple of peer-reviewed articles. So, one of the things that happens is that you submit an article and it will come back with the critiques of it, and so you're going to have to fix this. You're going to have to fix this. One of our articles, it took us almost 6 months to actually get it published from when we first submitted it. So that's a real thing. And what it really means to me is that there are people diligently looking at other people's work. You would think that I would be insulted by people doing that, making us rewrite it. But no, that was awesome that we were found, that we made a mistake somewhere. Somebody caught it. So when we did get the actual finished copy out there, we weren't spreading any misinformation. And I really appreciated that. So, I think peer review to me is one of the most important gateways, or not a gateway, but one of the most important things we have in science to gateway misinformation, right? So, or to not gateway it. Boy, I can't do it. I'm blaming it on that stroke I had a few weeks ago. That's not really why, but it's been a great excuse. I've been blaming everything on it. It's great.
Ben, you've been through medical school. How important is good scientific rigor in that process?
Yeah, so this topic of science versus religion, it also extends into pseudoscience versus science, because the same reasoning that gets you to religious conclusions are people use those same cognitive leaps to get to pseudoscience. And I was talking about this pretty recently, just about like naturopathy, homeopathy, chiropractic, certain fields that have a heavy emphasis on religious thinking, and this concept that, I have this belief already, and we're going to make the proof for that particular, to justify that particular conclusion, is absolutely backwards in how we should be looking at the world, right? We should be having a question first, and then like having an open mind and gathering the evidence that's there, instead of trying to fabricate evidence to back up what you already believe. And this is what predisposes people to have problematic ideas with regard to their healthcare, and it's not always benign. Like sometimes it'll be a very minor thing of, well, I just want to use natural things in conjunction with conventional medicine. And like, okay, I don't fully agree, but if somebody really kind of needs that for their own like emotional health, there are times when I'll say, okay, you know what, we can compromise on that. But it goes from there to adding on these layers of, well, actually, no, I believe prayer is the only thing that I need, and I won't go use conventional medicine, or I'll only use naturopathy. And that's where it really, really gets dangerous. So it's not just limited to religion. This is for any belief system that is not founded upon evidence. And it's important that we know how to think through these problems appropriately.
Yeah, so a question for both of you then, because obviously you've both been talking to religious believers for a number of years. When we've done this very thing on the show itself, we've compared religious belief to scientist belief. We did it in the opening. Is it fair to compare them when they're two completely different fields of study?
No, I don't think it is. And this is something, I mean, it's not something that's new to us today. Science and religion have been, and I don't want to say at war with each other, but let's say on opposites of each other for quite a while. And it doesn't always need to be. I mean, a lot of the things that we find out about through science just shows us the wonderment of the world. And isn't that what religion is about? Isn't it God made this wonderful world, you know? So a lot of times it just kind of boosts up that idea. But there's like people who are in the religious community who want to stick to the exact words of the Bible, say, and I'm just going to use that as an example. It could be the Quran or Upanishads, whatever, and want to, like I said, interpret it literally. And even when we can see that it is definitely wrong, or take something that's a scientific fact. I just had this happen to me with a Muslim a week or two ago, where here, these are these scientific facts that are in the Quran. And because those are there, then all the rest of the Quran is true as well. Right, which is a really bad assumption, really bad logical thinking. But this is some of the things that we see with religion tainting the ideas of science that I see anyway. One of the things I always like to point out, and I've done it before on one of the shows, is it took 100 years for all the churches in Europe to get lightning rods, because lightning was a judgment of God, and we weren't supposed to mess with lightning. So for 100 years, the churches in Europe some churches in Europe held out and wouldn't put lightning rods on their steeples. So that's just incredible to me.
Yeah.
Ben? Yeah. My whole perspective on this is like, it also kind of depends on what with religion we're talking about. Like if we're talking about religion and like people actually believing this stuff, it's definitely not fair to compare them, because one clearly is a methodology for investigating truth claims and has legitimate models, and the other one doesn't. And so it's completely ridiculous to elevate religion to the status of something else that is validated. And it further empowers religious people and religious leaders to think that they're authorities on anything. Like I think the idea that they think that they're religious experts, which they really aren't if you think about it, which is why like I wanted to separate religion into a couple different boxes, because I do think religious studies as a field, as far as like a cultural historical study, is like, that is a field that could be elevated to the same as science, because it's effectively it's a social science.
That's my field of study.
Yeah, no, it's a social science, and so in that case, you're studying the cultural aspects and historical aspects of religion, and like that could be elevated, but that's also relying on the scientific method, right? Like that's relying on validated models, whereas like pastors are just studying their own interpretation of their own religion and not learning about comparative religions. They're not learning about accurate history. They're not learning about accurate science. And yet they're mostly learning marketing, communication skills. And like, those are skills, but they're using them to defraud people, unfortunately. And so saying that somebody of that background is equally prepared to address the problems of the world as somebody with an actual degree in a validated study that's just ridiculous to me.
Do you think then that we can, in some cases, because I think we can. So I'm very interested in the both of your answers to this question. Do you think that religious claims, and I'm asking vaguely on purpose, do you think religious claims can be investigated by science? And if so, how and in what case?
Do you want to go first, Ben?
Yeah, I think that for the most part they can. I think some of the unfalsifiable claims is just like, no, but religious people are claiming that their religion or like their spiritual entity interacts with the physical world that we live in. And if that's the case, we should see evidence of that. We should be able to make that connection through natural means. So in that, I do think that it should be possible to do.
Yeah, like when does myth become reality, or vice versa, right? Suleiman thought he knew where Troy was at because of some ancient Greek mythologies, right? I mean, so yeah, I mean, sure, there are things that we can find through investigating mythologies. I'm sure of that. I don't know that they're 100% accurate, and I don't think that we should be using the sources of those beliefs as being something 100% accurate as well. Just because it's correct about one thing doesn't mean it's correct about all things, right? And I think that's one of the big mistakes that religious people make, is that, oh, this one fact or these 10 facts in the Bible are true, so the whole Bible must be true. These 12 things in the Quran are true, so the whole Quran must be true, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I agree. I think we can look at certain religious claims. We do have a caller who's calling on this very subject. So let's get into them. Kelly, thank you for jumping in and helping us out, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Sure, I'll go back to my cage, and somebody really needs to change the paper in there for me, please.
All right, let's talk to Anne. Pronouns are she, her, from California. Sounds like you want to talk about why theists are still clinging to religion when science has shown a better explanation of reality. Tell us more about this, Anne.
Hello, Dr. Ben. Hello, Kelly, and happy birthday, Richard, this week.
Thank you. Thank you.
Today.
So what would you like to talk about?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's kind of like a history of gods or something, because from what I understand, I'm not the most educated person, and, you know, I learn a lot from shows like this, but gods originally came about because people, like, they didn't understand what was going on in the natural world, and they just, you know, they made up gods, or they thought of gods, or said it was gods that was doing everything. And there used to be multiple gods, and then people started worshiping only one God. And even as science has advanced over thousands of years, gosh, how do I put this? You know, people still cling to gods. And you know, some of that I know, you know, people are religious or whatever, but oh gosh, how do I put it? Like, why do people still have gods when we have science, and science explains more and more things, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I think this is a great question, and I think it's a great question because, like all great questions, it is multifaceted, and I think you know, this is the stuff I do. This is my field of study, and I get so excited by questions like this. I think that you know, why are theists still clinging to religion when science has shown a better explanation? I think the most obvious answer to this is that people are born into religious communities and into religious families that they are indoctrinated in. And some people don't like to hear that word. Some religious people who've gone through this don't like to hear that word. But it is unfortunately true. People have been indoctrinated into this. I've told this story a couple of times before about a Mormon guy who I met. Lovely, lovely, lovely young guy. He really, really was. And he'd come to the UK. He'd come to the UK on mission. He'd grew up in a community about 20 miles outside of Las Vegas, and he had never heard of Michael Jackson until he came to the UK on mission, because the community that he grew up in was so insular, and it was that heavily indoctrinated into his kind of religious belief. That is not the fault of the person. These people who in that respect, cling to religion are victims. They really, really are. And it's very important that, you know, that we understand that when we're talking to them. These aren't the insert internet theist apologist name here of the world who come and specifically target atheist, call shows like this and things like that, wanting to get one-upmanship. These aren't these people. These are victims. These are people who hold a religious belief because they have been told from birth that it is true, and they have no other way of understanding the world. They've not been given any other kind of education experience to understand the world around them. And I think first and foremost, that is the case. But it's not always that black and white. And you get people who are religious and cling on to religious belief despite having good education, despite being told, given good scientific education. People who are scientists and religious, who know the methods, who know, what things to use and implement for good understanding of the world, who still hold on to these erroneous beliefs. And, that is largely, I think, due to cognitive dissonance, holding two contrary beliefs at the same time. And you see this, I see this, I communicate with a lot of these people a lot of the time when, someone has got there's an astrophysicist apologist out there in the internet, I'm not going to name them, who will state outwardly the heavens proclaim the glory of God's creation. And I have asked multiple times where this person has shown that in their work, and I never ever get a response. It's not that I don't get a good response. I don't get a response to that question. I am blanked always. And it's because it's hard to think about. You don't want to think about that. You don't, when you know the methodology that you should be applying. Where is your paper? Why aren't you writing papers on this if you're so convinced about it? It's that compartmentalization that we have when we approach things. And it's a real problem. I've been talking a while. Respond to me, and then I'll get Ben to have a little chat with you as well. Get Ben's opinion.
Well, I certainly understand being indoctrinated. I was indoctrinated into the Catholic religion when I was a child. But even with that indoctrination, I never really thought atheism was a thing, or I never thought of the possibility there could be no gods. But there was also a lot of cognitive dissonance, even when I was so young, growing up in that religion, the thing about, him dying on the cross and then coming back, how does that happen? certain stories in the Bible that are whatever they were teaching us that I'm like, okay, this is supposed to show that he's good, or I don't know. There was just, the Adam and Eve story didn't make any sense to me. Things like that, like even being indoctrinated in religion, there was just, I guess, certain things I couldn't get past. Like I couldn't make myself understand them or something. I don't know. But I was also afraid to ask. I was also afraid to question.
Yeah, I think like a lot of this is kind of dependent on individuals' responses to cognitive dissonance. I know for me, once I got that dissonance, it was pretty easy for me to change my belief system because I wanted to be honest with myself, and I would rather have a difficult truth than a comforting lie. But there are a lot of people that don't really know how to confront that cognitive dissonance, and whether it be they're stuck in a community that they are trying really hard not to leave, or whether it's just because they are unfamiliar with what the science is or unfamiliar with the topics that they're trying to understand. And so at the end of the day, it might be more comfortable for them to stay in that belief system, because getting out of any belief system is a lot of work. And I think like it's definitely more comfortable to just say, I have an answer, I have a path forward. And it takes a lot to kind of jump ship on that, especially when you've worked your whole life to establish a community. And it's definitely scary. So I think the same reasons why people are staying in now are the same reasons that you mentioned about people in history adopting religions in the first place. I think a lot of the psychological need for stability and safety kind of play into that, and people just don't know how to get out.
Yeah, I can understand that. Because, it was kind of like that for me growing up. And like I say, I'm not the most well-educated person in the world. I didn't go to college or anything like that, but I do seem to, I don't know, believe is the right word, but I guess I do seem to have more confidence in science than I do in religion or gods, because even though I can't make full sense of science, like there are, oh my gosh, I'm so bad at this.
No, look, no, you're not. It's easy to forget your thoughts. I do it all the time. I don't know whether that's just because I am incredibly old and almost incredibly older. Keep giving me that praise in the chat, people. But look, it's easy to do. Don't worry about it. You don't have to understand all the science. You don't. The important thing is, even the best scientific experts in the world are experts in their own field. And a lot of them never step outside. And especially as you go through the education system and you get more and more and more specialized, in a way you become more isolated to other fields of study. And you're really, really good at what you do in a very tunnel vision kind of way. So a lot of the world's best scientists in their own fields don't have an understanding of other scientific fields, sometimes even basic concepts, and that's fine. And that's not a problem. That's not a problem. The fact is, and the most important point is that it doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter who you are, you can go out and learn this stuff. You can learn these methods, not be told what the truth is, but be told how to find out the best information possible to give you the most likely answer for what is true. And that's really, really important. You can go and get this education. And this is so different to kind of religious faith and religious belief, in which you are told what to believe. There's a reason that a scientific discipline, even if groups of scientists within that discipline disagree with each other, they're disagreeing with each other based on the same kind of underlying material. I remember, I don't know what the status is now because I've not looked into it recently, but I remember distinctly a few years ago, there was this kind of, in geology, in volcanic prediction, the field of volcanology, there were two major theories about kind of how we can predict volcanic eruptions. And they were working off the same data. They were working off the same data, and they were coming up with different information. And that's completely different to religious belief, where the kind of theologies, the data, the theology is completely different and leads to these different sects and these competing sects. They're not working off the same data, they're working off completely different theologies. And the reason that is, and I'll talk specifically about Christianity because that's predominantly what our audience is. The reason that is because Christianity didn't have that base set of data. When Orthodox Christianity, and I use that term very, very strongly because all that means is when the people who were putting Christianity as we know it in the West together today, they considered themselves right, and the other people who didn't agree with them, they got the boot. And what was left, they called Orthodox, and that's all that means. That is literally all that means. When that was being put together, there were lots of different ideas, lots of different disparate ideas, lots of different theological ideas. The idea of, and I've spoken on the show about this many, many times, the idea of the Holy Spirit that the majority of Christians hold today was not an idea that the original Christian fathers, those people who were talking about the theology and putting the Bible as we know it together, it was a completely different idea of the Holy Spirit. It was a physical manifestation that came down, and it was the spirit of prophecy. And it was only because a particular bishop was misusing this prophecy that the other guys got together and said, that shouldn't be a primary source of Christian theology anymore because it can be misused. So let's kind of throw that aside. And over the centuries, it's taken on a completely different meaning. This is a difference. The data in science, even if scientists disagree, and which is a good thing, by the way, because that's how science progresses. That's what peer review is all about. The data in the science can be checked and measured by the people in that field, no matter where they are in the world, no matter what their particular personal opinions are on it, that data they're working from is the same and can be checked and measured. And that is why peer review works so, so well. I'm going to pass you on to Ben, who is, as I said, much more of has added scientific education and maybe to go into that a little bit more for you.
I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add, Richard. You did a pretty good analysis of everything. But yeah, it's a pretty complex relationship, I guess, between humanity and like our need to understand information, our need to feel like we understand information, and kind of how religion developed and the kind of ongoing war on science, war on religion, if you will. It's definitely something that people like get very overly confident about, kind of like going into some Dunning-Kruger area here with the fact that people, even if like, and when you were saying that you don't have a whole lot of knowledge in science or whatever, I think people with less knowledge of science, or at least that are willing to admit that they have less knowledge in science, are going to be better prepared to actually learn about it. Because what happens, we get religious people who know nothing about the science, but they pretend that they do, or they think that they do. They study maybe little bit of their own religion. I know a lot of Christians don't even fully understand their own religion, but they think they know enough, and they take whatever their pastor said and they say, well, I can do a better job than these scientists because my pastor says that creationism is real, and just forgetting the whole aspect of nuance within science. So I think that having less of a scientific background isn't necessarily is not necessarily a bad thing, as long as people are honest about what our limitations are. And like, there are plenty of fields that I do not know anything about. I was telling Richard beforehand that, business is an area that I know nothing about business. I know nothing about money. Like, so people can ask me questions about money and I'm not going to give them a good answer because, and I don't want to give that answer because somebody could get seriously hurt. But I think it's that disconnect of people not accurately being able to assess what their own knowledge base is. And I think a lot of that is probably due to the rise of the internet and the rise of easily accessible information. But even though information is easily accessible, we now have this battle with how much of it is accurate, how much of the information that I'm getting is actually correct, and then having to add an extra critical thinking skill to say, now I have to learn how to vet this information and figure out how I'm going to apply it to whatever discussion I'm having. So I think like this whole discussion maybe of religion versus science is just, we have people on one side knowing how complex the issue is, and then the other side is like, oh, well, no, it's simple. The sky is blue because the sky is blue, and animals are different kinds, and they were just poofed into existence that way. And so I think there's maybe just a lot of miscommunication and not fully understanding the whole issue.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. Because, well, it seems to me like with science, the more you learn, like it seems to me like every time science comes up with an answer, it also comes up with questions.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm as I've said a couple of times, I've not got a scientific background. I have a greatly interest in cosmology and physics. I love that subject, and I've read a lot about it. I've written a lot about it as a layperson. And one of the greatest things, it's one of those fields, is cosmology, where the more, is exactly what you've just said, the more we learn, the more we have questions. And the interesting thing about it, the really, really interesting thing about it, is when a cosmologist or a physicist comes up with something that kind of shuts down what is commonly held to be, the widest explanation we have in the field, what happens is it's not met like religious people meet it with scorn and saying, oh no, we must cling on to this. This has to be the truth. It has to be the truth. What happens is something really, really unique and brilliant. And the response from the people in the field is, this is amazing. These ideas that we have held on to, which the evidence has shown, more evidence has come along and it is overturning them. And that is brilliant. It is really, really good. This is exciting. And if you've ever heard a physicist or a cosmologist talk on these subjects, you can hear the palpable excitement about what they're talking about, because it's not a bad thing that we get more information. When we get more information which turns over what we hold to be true because it is better information, that is not a bad thing. And another thing that happens in science is if mistakes are made, what I've just been talking about are not mistakes. What I've been talking about is things that the evidence shows, and then we get new evidence that comes along. Occasionally, what happens is mistakes are made. sometimes what happens is people are dishonest as well. You do get people who are dishonest and try and twist things in a way for self-gain or whatever, like you do in all walks of life. But the thing that comes along and corrects it is not religion. It's other scientists. It's other people in the same field that they're in that hold them up and say, hang on, you're not meeting this standard. Something is not right here. So whether it's a mistake, whether it's dishonesty, whether it's just mute information, there is so much excitement when something new comes along and overturns what we know in science. And that is the beauty of it. It really, really is the beauty of it. And it is the strength of it. It really is. When we get this information, when we get, the Big Bang Theory, for example, is the currently held widest theory about how the universe began to exist. I suspect at some point in the future, because of all of the new information we're getting at the moment, and at the moment it is the currently held theory, I suspect at some point in the future, the Big Bang Theory will either be surpassed by something more subtle or overturned completely. And that is amazing. It is brilliant. Does it mean we shouldn't hold the Big Bang Theory to be true? No, because that's what the current evidence shows. So while that evidence is there, we should say, right, this is what the current evidence shows. This is the most likely explanation given the evidence we have. But if something does come along and overturns that, if something does come along and surpass that, that's not a bad thing. It's a brilliant thing. I love it. I love the whole thing. Give us a response, and let's. Me and Ben have been talking for ages. Let's have your thoughts for a little bit.
Well, I actually like that when you make a new discovery in science, it opens up more questions, because it's just fun, so interesting to learn those things. And it's not like scientists are saying, okay, the Big Bang happened and that's it, no more, and we can all just go home and take a nap now. But I feel like religion, like they want absolutes. Like it was this way. God created the earth 6,000 years ago, and Adam and Eve were in, the Garden of Eden, and that's just it. And I've never heard of a fish turning into a monkey. I've heard someone say that before on a show. It's or if they don't believe in evolution, they're like, well, if we evolved from monkeys, which I don't know if that's really like the monkeys or apes, but we evolved from a monkey, then why is there still monkeys? And and I guess it's kind of like, well, what do you do from that point? When someone believes like that.
Yeah, I mean, we can't tar all religious people with the same brush. Not everybody is that level. Not everybody who is religious is a science denier. There were lots of people.
Of course, yeah.
And I think this is why I said at the very beginning of this that this was such a brilliant question, and why it is so multifaceted, is because we have so many different reasons for why people believe. And, people have cultural incentives to believe. They might not even be religious. They might not even be indoctrinated into religion when they're born into a religious family, but they might grow up in, a Western culture. They might be from an Eastern tradition and grow up in a Western culture and be completely atheist, but return to kind of looking at their cultural roots later in life. All these things are real scenarios that happen, and people are persuaded by lots and lots of different things. One of the biggest things I'm interested in is psychology and neurology, how the brain works, which leans into my philosophy background, and how consciousness works, how the brain works, and all that good stuff, all that meaty good stuff. And when we learn about how, I think we need education on how the brain works. I think that is the most critical part of education we need, because I think that is a great point of interacting with overcoming these cultural biases is learning how we make mistakes and being able to spot it in ourselves. You know, one of the biggest things I always put to people when I'm talking about consciousness is I make mistakes too. My brain makes mistakes. I mistake things for people that aren't there. I hear noises, voices that aren't there. I see shadows out of the corner of my eye, which I mistake for things that aren't the things that they are. And it happens. And this isn't me being some kind of weird or special. This is everybody's brain. This is how our brains work. They seek patterns. Our brain seek patterns. And when we're interpreting the world around us, we seek patterns. And there's no surprise whatsoever that if you go on, for example, a ghost hunting group, I used to be the resident skeptic in a ghost hunting group. And without exception, I have never been on a ghost hunt where it's not being held at night, it's not being held in an unfamiliar place. And these are all things that creep in to your brain and trick your brain into seeing things and hearing things and perceiving things that aren't actually happening. And it's that your brain works the same, whether it's in a familiar place or an unfamiliar place. But the way the brain works is it takes in information through your sense organs, through your eyes and your ears, etc. But it cross-references that with previous knowledge that we have. So we don't operate like video cameras. Our eyes aren't video cameras that just take everything in and we're assessing that now. It's always been cross-referenced with what we already hold. So if we're put in a situation where our sense organs do not have that information coming to us, if it's in a dark room, if it's an unfamiliar room where we cannot cross-reference that previous knowledge of that place, where we're not getting that information in, our brain, being pattern-seeking, fills in those gaps. And that's why people are more prone to seeing ghosts and things in those situations. It's not that there are ghosts there, it's that our brains play tricks on us. And the people very often who are telling people that they can communicate with the dead are taking advantage of this, specifically taking advantage of this. And it works exactly the same in religious belief. When we transfer it into religious belief, we're still pattern seeking. We're still seeking those patterns. So even if, when I was talking earlier about scientists who have religious belief, even though those scientists know the methodologies of methodology, before someone in the chat shouts at me, of their particular field, their brain is still pattern seeking. So if they have an underlying belief in God, they are going to fill in any gaps with that. Ben, do you want to talk us a little bit through more about the biology of how that works, that process works?
Yeah, I mean, without going in too much detail, I mean, even just keeping it in the relevant sphere here, like what Richard is saying, like it's important to recognize, like, yeah, we rely a lot on cross-referencing patterns that we see and relating things to prior knowledge and prior experiences. And when we don't have that, if we don't have the proper experience or foundational knowledge there, it's pretty easy for us to start making up shit because of whatever our intuition tells us. And this is how we get into some very sticky situations with religion, but also within pseudoscience, because if let's say you've been diagnosed with some chronic condition that is going to have a big impact on your life, but you don't understand the medical science related to that, but you want to believe that there is a way forward, that there's a way out of your situation. And so it's pretty easy for you to think, oh yeah, well, it would just make sense to me that these herbal remedies are going to work. And you're not going to be able to pull yourself out of that without that additional knowledge. And so people get stuck in these kind of old wives' tales and other kind of fairy tale beliefs about their own health and about the world around them. So it's kind of where I always say that intuition is a great thing to help you ask questions, but it's terrible to rely on intuition for answers. It's the same thing as relying on faith. And faith even like really is just intuition about things that have even less of a basis for evidence in the natural world. So it's a lot of it is people who, were indoctrinated in certain belief systems. And so they have this idea of what the universe is and how it works. And so whenever they don't know an answer, they just go to whatever pattern is already in their head. So like if we think through history or even just hypothetical examples from like human history, we have patterns that we notice, like you go out into nature and you know that you need to eat something and there are berries on a bush. And if you've never experienced those berries on that bush, it could be easy to say, well, those are obviously edible berries. But if you have prior experience, that's only berries are edible and they're fine, I'm going to be okay. Then that time that you eat berries that are not edible, well, maybe you didn't have a reference for that, and now you're dead. Like that mistake cost you. So it is important to make sure that you're not relying on that pattern seeking alone. I think it's okay to lean on that if your patterns are based on experiences that have been, tested and validated, like the experiences of a nurse who's been working for 30 years is pretty accurate compared to somebody who has never worked in the healthcare field. So like when people say like nurse's intuition or like mother's intuition or things like that, like, yes, there's a component of intuition there, but there's also a lot of trial and error and underlying experience and fundamental knowledge that actually plays into that. So not all intuition is the same. And it's important to think through scenarios when we're looking at the world and say, okay, am I basing this on intuition, or do I actually have good evidence or good experience to back up why I'm thinking this way?
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, I had a baby once, and I guess I had mother's intuition, but again, it was like you said, there was intuition, like, well, I sense the baby's hungry because he's crying, so I'd feed him and then he'd be better. But that also took trial and error, because sometimes when a baby's crying, it's like you try to feed it, you try to change its diaper, it's not gonna, and it's still crying. Like, you've used all the best information at your disposal, I suppose, and sometimes it's still not easy to figure out why the baby's crying, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And it's definitely, you probably feel more comfortable addressing some of that when you're no longer a new parent and when you get to know that baby a bit better, and then you can have a pattern that is reliable compared to, if you were a brand new parent, they probably, like you were saying at the beginning, you probably feel like you have no idea what to do, probably very frustrated. But that kind of goes away after a while. And I think that more people, if they stop, like, if they stop completely relying on that intuition alone, but also remember that they're making those decisions based on prior experience, they can decide, okay, was this experience in particular worth making decisions based on?
Right. Can I kind of go off topic and switch gears a little bit? because
Yeah,
I want to talk. Sorry.
Oh yeah, we can for a little bit, although we've been on this call for a long time, so I want to give other callers a chance as well. But go for it. What you got?
Okay, well, I've never heard of any like falsifiable, unfalsifiable until I started watching these types of programs where the concept of God, they would say is unfalsifiable, and maybe something like gravity is falsifiable. And I'm just trying to figure out what that means. Just a quick overview.
Richard, do you want to go for it?
Yeah, okay, sure. See, this is what we were talking about earlier, because it's very difficult when we're talking about religious claims, because some of them are falsifiable as well, so it gets confusing. Essentially, what we're talking about is when something is falsifiable, we can test it. That's the black and white explanation of it. If something is unfalsifiable, so let's say, for example, if I tell you let's use the famous Bertrand Russell, there's a teapot orbiting Mars, and we can't test that claim. So I've made an unfalsifiable claim, because there's no way to test that. I mean, in this day and age, there probably is, but when Bertrand Russell made that claim, we couldn't falsify that. So if we're saying something like we have a creator that exists outside of time, space, and when we understand what that means, because what that actually means is outside of reality, when we're saying there is a God that exists outside of reality, there is no way we can test that claim. It's simply not possible to do. Therefore, it is an unfalsifiable claim. Whereas if we say Richard is holding this cup right here in his hand, that is a falsifiable claim. It is something that can be tested, and that is the long and short of what that means. It gets sticky because some religious claims can be falsified. For example, people might say the city of which is mentioned in the Bible, is a city that existed, which is, it is a claim we can go out and test. So that claim is, even though it's a religious claim, is a falsifiable claim. We tend to put a demarcation line as skeptics, as in the claims that are supernatural religious claims and things that are natural religious claims. The Jesus might have existed, the city of might have existed, the Muhammad might have existed. These are potentially falsifiable claims, but they're totally uninteresting for the point of view of God existing, because even if they're true, they don't prove that God exists. So the claims we are interested in is the ones that prove that God exists. And when you kind of break these down, these tend to be the ones that are unfalsifiable. The religious people put forward and say, well, God's outside of time and space and matter and all that kind of stuff. Well, what good is that? We can't falsify that. You have in that, as a religious person, you have in that respect no justification for believing that exists. Ben, anything you'd like to add on that?
No, I think that sums it up pretty well.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much for taking my call.
Yeah, I know we've covered a lot of stuff in that one, Anya. It might be a rewatch. It might be a go back and rewatch it. And obviously, if you've got any more specific questions, really, when you rewatch it and you think, I'm a bit interested in that subject, you can always call us again or reach out via email if there's one of us specifically you want to talk to. And we'll be very happy to respond to you there, or take your call if you want to call back and discuss it in the future. But thank you very much for the call. A great question for me, anyway, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your call. Have a great Sunday.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Real quick, before we get into our next caller, Richard, would you like to read the top 5 patrons of the week? I can't hear you, Richard.
You know why you can't hear me? Because I have
You're
done
muted.
a Johnny P. Angel and muted myself. And I am the producer of the show and should know better. And I can hear Greg shouting in my ear right now that I am a complete imbecile, which is true. So the top 5 patrons for this week are, oops, all singularity, Dinglebury Jackson, Kalevi Helveti, J.A. Carlton, and Casey. Oh, this is one I've not pronounced before. I apologize, Casey. I'm going to do this badly. Casey Kickendall. And the honourable mention goes to number 6, Stephen McDougall. Thank you to everybody who gives on Patreon. We very, very much appreciate your support. Every week, every single week on Patreon, on a Tuesday, you will see me on the Talk Heathen. These are replayed on Patreon. So we do lives on a Tuesday on the Talk Heathen, that thing that is called TikTok. Every Tuesday, I will do a live on TikTok. We record those specifically for our paid patrons, and they usually last anything from an hour to about 3 hours. Jimmy Jr. does one on a Thursday, which is also recorded for patrons. It's just part of, the great extra stuff you get being a Patreon, and that's for all levels of paid patron. So thank you very much for our patron supporters. We do try to give back what we can when we can by giving you extra little things like that, which are great. And we also have a super chat from Ann Johnson for $5 who says, "Happy birthday, Richard."
Yay, happy birthday, Richard.
It's not today, it's later on in the week, but I'm classing it as today because it's my birthday week show. And love to everybody at Talk Heathen, not just me. Everybody does a great job, and Anne sends love to everybody, as should everybody in the audience. Ben.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Anne, for that super chat. And if anybody wants to leave another super chat, we will get to those before the end of the show. So be sure to send those in if you want those read live on the air. And with that, we do have another caller in the queue. Let's talk to Chris from Texas. Wants to talk about cognitive symmetry. Chris, you are live on Talk Heathen. Tell us more about your position.
Oh, all right. This was prompted by Dr. Ben's experience with biology, and I'm autistic, and I try to resolve the differences between the non-autistic and autistic communities. One of the things that I settled on is the ability for groups of people to come to acquire a symmetry amongst themselves, and they call that neurotification. Well, I think that actually descends further into our creature, down to our physiology and down to our neurology. Our neurology, and probably eukaryotic cells, learn from their environment what works, and then predicts that memory that they learn from predicts a response, predictive memory. And I think part of what we see in like the religious and non-religious experiences is that portions of the people's neurology settles on a region of the brain that is satisfied with what comes from other people. I call that exogenous symmetry, where you are symmetrical in a group. The autistics tend to be endogenous. They establish their own internal symmetry. And so I was wondering if you could talk about maybe the lives of nerves or cells and how they try to conduct their existence by just getting signals from around them and then learning to respond. Because I think that may have that's a perspective I want to hear other people on.
So I think there's a lot of blurring here between psychology and neurology. I think maybe there's too much intention given to the cells themselves, because I mean, really, when we're talking about neurons and what they're doing, like they're literally just sending like electrical signals and relying on electrolyte movements across a membrane. So as far as cells trying to do anything, I don't think the cells are really trying to do anything. It's just the mechanisms happen to work, and over time they've gotten more and more efficient. And so as far as bridging this gap now between, you have this physiologic property of nerve conduction and now jumping over to how, like, we have consciousness and all that stuff, I don't really have much to weigh in on that particular piece because I'm not a psychologist. Pretty much I'm limited to discussing like the specific mechanism within the neurons. And even then I'm not a neurologist. So I can do my best, but this maybe is bridging more into psychology than physiology.
Just your observations. I mean, this is a nascent idea of mine that I'm filling in. I have some other perspectives about the neurons. If you will let me talk about it, I will.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Well, when I have a physics background, and one of the things that to realize is when you have the nerves operating, they are moving charge around. There's a charge transfer. When the charge moves,
Yes.
it creates a pulse. And I think the structure of a neuron has two roles, or three roles. It does conduction, it does detection, and it does amplification. So the neurons have the ability to communicate to other neurons around them without the need of a neurotransmitter connection. They can get an induced charge, and they can also amplify that through the biochemistry. And so I think what this means is, instead of being a single line wire conduction, this is a field that the neurons are in. And the field is very small and doesn't transmit very far, but the density of the neural tissue puts a lot active. And I think that can contribute to more components becoming active for a particular experience. That's just my conjecture, and I'm digging around in that. So,
I mean, yes, it's possible to recruit other neurons, but again, like, the issue we're having here is, like, all of that is going to, like, anything that is going to relate to memory or reward processing, all that, like, that's going to originate like within certain parts of the brain, right? And so you have that initial transmission. You have that, and like the initial transmission has an origin, and like that's kind of the important factor. Yes, you can stimulate neurons to propagate a signal. However, if you're just doing that, that doesn't mean that you're going to get all these other effects with it. Like, and sure, there could be a field where you're recruiting other neurons around it, but if there isn't the original signal and the original instructions, it's not really going to do much. And because I mean, we think about this too, because you have neurons that are acting within the brain, but you also have neurons that like very similar neurons that act within like the spinal cord, within peripheral nerves. So like the neurons themselves like aren't like, I mean, they're super cool, but the neurons themselves aren't anything crazy special with regard to like consciousness, like, because we're having the consciousness originate from the brain specifically. So but neurons are present in plenty of tissues that do not have consciousness. So like, I want to be careful to not go so far into the weeds of things that like aren't really substantiated. And I don't know much about this specific thing, but maybe it's worth looking into some publications, or if you have an idea, like consider like even publishing on your own or getting with a university and trying to publish. But I think it's important not to speculate too far into something, especially before we have proper evidence of it.
All right, I understand that, but I want to back up. I just went a little too deep into neurons, but it's the behavior of neural tissue to relearn things. It doesn't make a difference at what scale. It can be, regulation of internal blood pressure organizations through signaling, but it gets a signal, it makes an adjustment or releases a signal that is anticipated to help, like blood pressure regulation. That's a parasympathetic.
Yes, we have feedback mechanisms. I apologize. I'm failing to see how this connects to the kind of the point of the show and with like religion and all that.
You have the same underlying systems, and you just keep scaling up into the same processes until you get into a cognitive state, and then the cognitive state learns a particular.
Right. So you're essentially describing like how we get to consciousness and learning and memory and stuff. I think maybe we need to get out of the minutia of the mechanism of neurons, because as fascinating as that can be for kind of individual learning, I think we're losing the audience a bit there and losing the conversation a bit. So
okay, it's fine. I just tried.
Let's stick to. Yeah, no. Is there anything else you want to kind of discuss about, kind of about the topic of the show?
No. Well, this ultimately, I was going to scale up to spirituality and non-spirituality and choices in life. That's what I called cognitive symmetry. But maybe I need to develop. I'll keep developing this. I was just sampling you since you were available, so I'm good to go.
I think
anything?
Yeah, I think the difficulty is here that as Ben has said, and this is right up my alley. I was kind of a little bit, I felt left out and a little bit hurt that this was directed at Ben, because this, no, I'm kidding. This is right up my alley. This really, really is right up my alley. My background is in philosophy. Consciousness is a particular subject of mine that I really, really, enjoy delving into, and I've got a very, very strong interest in psychology and neuroscience as well. So this is right up my alley. I do agree with Ben that it's kind of crosses a few fields, this, and your question, although or your idea, it's a good idea, but I think it crosses too many fields to be kind of discussed in depth, especially on a call that's 10-15 minutes long. Mm-hmm. And I do think you need to kind of go away and write your thoughts down and have them assessed in the appropriate fields. However, having said that, I'm very interested in the subject. I've got an autistic son, so I'm very interested in this subject as well from the point of view of autism. If I may, I would like to give you two helpful suggestions of books that might help you gather your thoughts on this. One is about how consciousness, and this is written by a neuroscientist, and it is how consciousness actually forms. And this is an introductory level book that he specifically wrote to simplify some of the ideas he's put forward in his more kind of academic books, because a lot of people who were reading them were really interested in the ideas but weren't quite understanding it. So it's a guy called Antonio Damasio, and the book is called Feeling and Knowing. And as I said, it's specifically written as an umbrella introduction into how consciousness actually comes from the physical brain and how it works from there. That I think would be really, really helpful to kind of go and have a look at, to get the underlying thing of consciousness. Another one is looking at no specific work, but the kind of go and listen to the works of a neuroscientist called Dr. Dean Burnett, who specializes, is a science communicator again. So his his communication is very simple. He doesn't overcomplicate things, but he specifically works professionally in the field of autism and other kind of I don't know how to phrase this, non-normative brain states, shall we say, that people have. So that's his actual professional work, and he is a scientific communicator. He works for the BBC, does work for the BBC. He's written for the New York Times. He's a very, very good communicator. He's written several books on neurology and neuroscience. And as I say, his professional work, it does deal with autism specifically. Go and have a look at those two authors. It might help you gather your thoughts into a cohesive framework that you can actually put together in a simplified way and present to somebody in those fields that can understand you. And I think that would be the best next step for you.
All right.
But thank you for the call. For me, this has been a great call, especially just listening to you and Ben natter away. So yeah, right up my street. As was the first call. It's my birthday week. All the stars have aligned and brought me the calls that I am really, really interested in. And fuck everybody else. I don't care about them. But no, seriously, thank you very much for that call, Chris. I very much appreciate it. And Ben, anything else?
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to call me about the kidneys, and I'm kind of offended now because Richard gets everything that he wants. But I don't think there's anyone out there claiming that the kidneys prove God, although there might be. So if people think the kidneys prove God, I want to hear from you. But yeah, no, I think that's it from me. Thank you, Chris, for your call.
All right. Bye-bye, guys.
Take care. All right, and with that, I'm going to bring Kelly back up. If you're still back there, I hope they changed the paper out for you like you requested.
Yeah, I finally got somebody to do it. And since the kidneys are such a perfect filter, wouldn't that be proof of God? Because they perfectly filter. It's like, look at the kidneys, Ben.
Look at the kidneys. I want somebody to call in with a look at the kidneys argument. But I brought you all here today because there's something very, very important that we have to talk about, and that is, have you watched The Nonprofits? Have you seen that? Have you seen that show? I think Kelly's never heard of it before.
I've heard of it a little bit. Just somewhere, I can't quite remember where, some fringe thing, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, it's some channel, like it's by some organization. I think it's the ACA or something like that.
Yeah.
But there's a show called The Nonprofits, and everyone, I think, in the audience knows I'm trolling. We love The Nonprofits, but they have shows at 6 p.m. Central, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. This is a place where you can learn about news articles pertaining to the separation of religion and government, as well as religion's impact on society and culture. They also can be found on TikTok, and it's something that you definitely don't want to miss. I think all three of us have been on there at some point in the past, but it's definitely worth a watch. And we have the hosts for this week's episodes include Damien, Trust But Verify, and Eli. And I apologize for my dog barking at something. But it's always a great time over at The Nonprofits. So definitely go give it a watch and go like and subscribe over there.
And remember, it is the flagship show of the ACA. So go there, check it out.
Someone was going to say it wasn't there at some
you
point.
knew I was going to.
Yeah. Go and watch The Nonprofits first and foremost, because all joking aside, they are really, really good. And as Ben has said, we have all been on there at some point. I've always loved it being on there. I'd still do the shows if the time zones allowed. Honestly, it's the time zones that prevent me from doing them. I have invited so many theists to call from social media this week who have been insisting that they are right and they have great arguments. We have had theists in the chat during this very show spouting their mouths off and they have been invited to call, and I know they have been invited to call because I've invited them to call in the chat when they've been doing it, and I've tagged them and invited them to call. Theists, we want good conversations with you. We genuinely do. And if you watch back the episodes of the shows when we have a lot of theist callers, we generally do have really good, friendly conversations. It's really infuriating when you preach and you don't call the show. Preaching, despite being the thing that the Bible commands you to do as some kind of really, really good and high performance thing to get to people, is the single worst thing you can do to convince me that God exists. If you preach at me, it tells me that you do not have either a convincing argument or evidence for the existence of God. Because if you had those things, you'd be phoning and giving them to me. Especially you guys who would sit there and say, I care about you. The reason I'm preaching is because I genuinely care about you and I don't want you to go to hell. Well, call me then. And then you get dead silence. That's not somebody who cares. If you claim to care about me and you claim to want to get me to believe in God because this will save my eternal soul, call the show. Give me the arguments. Don't preach at me. That doesn't work. You have been told. I'm going to pass you over back to Dr. Ben.
Yeah, I saw those people in the side chat as well, and definitely give us a call. We want to hear from you. And Kelly, any comments that you have about the calls from today?
Yeah, well, I was going to say that if you want to reach people, and isn't that the thing that you want to do? You want to reach more people. There's only so many people that are actually watching the show live. So you're only going to reach maybe 100 people in the chat, but people watch this show all week long. So if you really want to reach 1,000 people, 2,000 people, you need to call in and be on the show. And I mean, go back and watch past episodes of Talk Heathen. We are not mean to people. We're really nice. It's a great show to call in and get your ideas across. There might be some critical analysis of those ideas, but we will stay nice to you. So please just call in.
Absolutely. And with that, let's send out some love rings.
Straight from the heart of Kelly's tie there.
Thanks everybody for another great week. If you don't believe this is your community, we appreciate you being here as always. And of course, go check out SoFree and the other organizations that we are going to be featuring on this show. And if you do believe, we don't hate you.
We're just not convinced. See you next week.
We want the truth. So watch Truth Wanted live Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. Call 512-991-9242 or visit tiny.cc/call TW.